Think illness absence, think Bradford factor score. Think illness absences, think Bradford factor score. Think sick off or sick leave, think Bradford factor score. And so that's what we're going to be considering today, because my friend had a very terrible experience because of a very high Bradford factor score. The Bradford heat map, you're going to learn about it. So in today's discussion, you will know what Bradford factor is. You will know the formula for calculating Bradford factor. And you will know when Bradford factor will trigger troubles for whoever has been getting off hill at places of work. Let's dive right into this as we go through the learning process. See you soonest. This is the peak of wickedness. These people do forget easily. Oh, dear friend and colleague, why would they have paid you back in this manner? These were the kind of words that came down to my friend DK some few weeks back when he got a sack letter. He was fired at work after having illness leaves, which we call sick leave or sick off. DK had been occasionally off work, off duty for some reasons due to illnesses, and that had periods of illness meetings. They do have first stage, second stage, third stage, or as many stages as possible. When it comes to illnesses, the impact is having on organization or on any of the firms. And unfortunately, my friend had to have his job hacked off because of illness. Yeah, should we say this is all about wickedness? Should we say this is bigotry? Should we say this is tribalism? Should we say is this favoritism to those who have not been sacked? The begging for answer has been this among many of the workers. But then, considering institutional policies and looking at what is called Bradford factor, we may think that the management may just have to take some steps at some particular point in time when someone has been off sick. So today, I will be discussing with us what is Bradford factor, what kind of situations could make an employer be fired from workplace because of illness. Really, when it comes to illness, everybody should be empathetic or sympathetic towards the person a particular length of time. But because there are organizational policies, institutional policies, and what should be followed, and in most situations, these things are not being manually computed, it will definitely trigger for some information, it will trigger some action when these things get to a particular boundary. And this was what actually happened to my darling friend that made him to be fired from Bradford factor. It is a scale that the researchers made for bosses to figure out how much effect or damage an employee's absences really have on an organization or an industry or an institution. Many organizations do depend on this Bradford factor to make decisions, but there has been suggestions that a good standard practice is to pair the Bradford factor scores in with time and attendance software, as well as train human resources personnel to interpret the Bradford factor scores, but not to rely entirely on Bradford factors. The Bradford factor has been known to be used to highlight suspicious trends in sick leave or sick offs that an employee has been presenting, and it do show when such sick offs or sick leaves require further investigations. What is this Bradford? How is this factor being calculated? A mathematical thing where you will have the S square multiplied by D equals to B, or I do call it BF. So the S there is the total number of separate absences by an employee, while the D is the total number of days of absence of that particular person that has been employed, the employee. B or BF is the Bradford factor score, and it could be used in so many places. And like the name suggested, it was actually originally developed in Bradford University School of Management in the early 1980s, and it is used by many companies across the globe, including governmental institutions or organizations like the United Kingdom Prison Service, for example. And it provides a very useful benchmark index tool enabling managers to have an assessment score for an individual staff absence record. The Bradford factor does not take into considerations any type of specific factors like things that could actually influence absences, like disability or recurring illnesses or anything that is causing sporadic absenteeism over a period of time, over a period of weeks. But it is very, very useful as a key information supplier to raise concerns, to identify concerns, or a very useful tracking tool, I meant. There are various companies across the globe that are utilizing the factor score as a trigger to guide and to help them to implement more comprehensive support and monitoring procedures for individuals. So I want to say this, that when an employee has been going on sick off, there are things that our employee ESR or whatsoever, it's like a graph. If you go on sick off, there is a way it's going to print it, maybe green, at some point it will be yellow, at some point it could be orange, at some point it could become red. So they call that graph heat map or whatsoever it should be called, or heat graph, whatever you want to call it. It will be concerning if an employee has been absent at work for sufficient days for a manager to show concern and advise on possible disciplinary or financial actions if there is going to be more absences within a specific period. That's one way that Bradford factor could be used, and such Bradford factor score will be 45. So there are different scores that could come up from Bradford factor. I will tell us how to calculate the Bradford factor. It's quite easy. And another part is it could be concerning if the Bradford factor is 100, which means that the said person, the employee, has had sufficient days of absences for a manager to start disciplinary action, or give the employee oral warning, or give them written warning, or formal monitoring, or all those things. Now, when the Bradford factor has reached 900, like it's been calculated, and 900 has been scored by the absentee, then it is sufficient days for a manager to consider dismissal. So let's have a look. If someone's been absent from has never been absent from work for at any point in time, there is no point to be concerned about the person. But if someone's in absence, I mean, the Bradford factor has been calculated and it's like 22 or more, between 22 and 44. There could be some concerns from the employer. They may call the person, that there are things that are happening. Do we need to support you more? Do you need anything that could help you? Do you need occupational health visits or information, instruction, or inputs to help you to do better with your work and with your health and all those things? Because they know, they want to know if it is the workplace that is posing so much stress or stressors on you that it's making you absent from work, so that they will know how to adjust things for you. Honestly, my last place of work is one place that I've seen occupational health practically doing everything. When someone is complaining of backache, you see awkward, sharp, they've changed the tables. When someone is saying maybe they cannot see something, you see that occupational health steps in. They possibly could say they should see ENT and all those things as speedily as possible. Are they complaining of sight and they have glasses? I have people whose lettering on their computer is different. I have people who have different anti-glare materials around their workplaces and all those things. And you must actually take your breaks to step off from your computer for 15 minutes. You have good eyesight. That was one place that I actually saw everything occupational health very, very active, honestly, and I give it to them, a big respect to them. So they want to see, do they need to support you more if you are still below 45 in the score? By the time the person is scoring 45, they may say, okay, we need to do some things, we need to put some actions in places for this person to be able to support them. We don't want them to have troubles, because they know that if anything happens, especially if it is the workplace troubles that cause the person a very big health challenge, then they may be sued and they may need to pay damages. So they want everyone to be in optimal state of functionality. Now, when the person is scoring 100 in that Bradford factor score upon the heat map, then they may be considering disciplinary action for the person. What should we do? How should we discipline this person? This and that. Should they pay when they say they are on leave? Should we withdraw? You know, when you are on, you can call in sick in this UK for a particular point, for a particular length of time, and particular periods in the United Kingdom, and you will be paid. Should we withdraw the payment for this person so they can feel that it pinches the organization and all those things? They will look at all those things. Then this factor is really extremely red, like the factor is 900. There may be need to put up serious disciplinary action. And that was actually what happened to my dearest boy, my friend. And he had to be told to go and take good care of himself at home because he's consistently being ill. Now, how is this Bradford factor or whatsoever calculated? How is it being calculated? Like I mentioned, we have the S square multiplied by D to make the Bradford factor, to give you the Bradford factor score. So the S, like I mentioned, is the total number of separate absences of an individual. And D is the total number of days of absence of that individual. While B is the Bradford factor score that the person have. Now, how many occurrences? How many times has this person called in sick? Let's assume that this person called in sick once. And the number of days they spent during that illness, they were at home for 10 days. The Bradford factor will come out to be 10. Well, how is that? This person called in sick, and that is S. Mathematically, you raise that S to a power of 2, which is 1 raised to power 2, which will still be 1, and the person was absent at work for 10 days, it will still give 10. So it's not raising any concern at all. But let's look at somebody else. This person called in sick twice, but the number of days they were absent in those 2 times were, let's say they were absent for 8 days altogether. Maybe they possibly called in sick. The first time they called in sick, they spent 4 days at home and came back to work. The second time they fell sick, they came back to work after spending 4 days at home. So they had 8 days of absence. But because the number of occurrences is 2, which is S, it must be raised to the power of 2. That makes it 2 times 2, which equals to 4, and multiplied by the number of days, which was not even up to the number of days the other person that called in once and spent then 10 days at home had spent. This person is already having 32 for 2 episodes, whereas the person who called in sick once, even the person who called in sick once and decide to, in that just 1 period, spend 25 days at home, will not even score up to what this our friend will be scoring, because it will still be 1 square raised to power 2, 5. Honestly, that is what the person will have. The person will just have 25 days and it's still not causing any concern. But this person called in sick 3 times, and maybe in the 3 times that they called in sick, they spent, let's say they spent 10 days altogether in those 3 times. First time they called in sick, they spent 2 days at home. The second time they spent 4 days. The third time they spent 4 days, making 10 altogether. You will raise the number of occurrence, which is 3 to a power of 2. That will give you 3 times 3, which is 9. And the number of days altogether, which is 10, make it that this person has had a Bradford factor of 90. Honestly, when you see someone at your place of work, you say, but this person has been gone for long and they did not talk. They did not call them for meeting. They are being, they are displaying bigotry here and all that. Know that it is not totally that they are displaying anything, but it is the Bradford factor that is speaking against you. And so you must know that once you are healed, ensure you get well enough to come back to work before you return, so that you will not come back and then return again, and you come back and return again, and this Bradford factor will be speaking against you. There are many people who do not know what is happening here, and they will be thinking, it's because we are not this, it's because we are not that, it's because that person that has gone for 33 days is a friend to our manager. The manager is shunting me. No, it's not that. It's all about Bradford factors, and it's all about institutional policies too. Some institutions, even if your Bradford factor isn't like this, if you've called in, if you've called in sick 4 times in a year, they will have to call you for a meeting. But to avoid stories that touch the liver, once you are healed, ensure you get really very well before you are returning to work. And yeah, this actually happened. It was a very painful occurrence. The only beautiful thing was that this person already has indefinite leave to remain. Otherwise, if they are still on COS, it might be very, very troublesome. It might be very, very troublesome for them. But then to lose work at this particular point in time, when everything is tight, when inflation is high, is actually not the best way to it. And really, the managers could not do so much because everything is being technologically documented. They couldn't influence that. There was no way they could have stopped what was there. So it just had to happen. But so that you know, I will leave you the link to this Bradford factor calculation so that you will know how to work things around and be the best. I wish every one of us good and perfect health, that no evil will befall any one of us. We have no reasons to keep calling sick at work. But anytime you are thinking about calling in sick, think sickness, leave, think Bradford factor. Think sick of, think Bradford factor. Think illness absences, think Bradford factor score. Take your formula on it, help yourself into it. See that you are not crossing 45, you are not crossing to 100, you are not crossing into 900. And I wish you the best of health as you go through your work in Jesus' name. Bye-bye. Take care.